inspectors that's been here over 30 years.
Hmm.
And he told Kathy, who comes to visit me from the office, he said, she said she was coming over to visit me, and he said, oh, you tell her she's the best president I ever worked with. And coming from him, that's very
30
good.
years.
30 years he's been here, so.
A lot of presidents.
Lot of
17 mutuals times 30
15
years.
mutuals.
15 mutuals times 30.
Yeah,
It's 450
yeah.
president
So,
years.
I was very successful as a president. But I left it, and my hope was that the next one would come, take it, and move it forward.
That's the most difficult
And
job.
that's what she's doing. She's doing a good job.
You're recording this, right,
What?
Justine?
Oh, I just started.
Oh, you're recording this? Okay, you want to?
Yes. So there were a couple things that I wanted to hear about. I wanted to hear about your dad and his work ethic, and how his motto for life kind of affected your motto for life. And then I also wanted to hear about what the craziest thing you did as a child was.
Okay, let's start with the first thing with my father's ethic, his work ethic.
Yes.
As I said, he worked very hard, and he took care of not only my family, but he took care of his mother and the kids to get them from Europe to America, and then he helped with all of that. And one of the things he always said, well, you just do what you have to do, was when he went on that underground railroad in the wood delivery wagon. And I asked how he did it. He said, well, you just do what you have to do. And he was only 16 at the time, and I think that was a thread that ran through his life.
Mm-hmm.
You do what you have to do. Now, the other, how did it affect me? Well, it was basic to my life that you just had to take care of things, and you had to do what you had to do in order to do it. It encouraged me to go on through a lot of school,
Mm-hmm.
but I'll talk about that later. So what was the other thing?
What were your first words again?
My first words was, I do it myself. And that was like the whole thing of my life. I would never ask for help. I would just do it myself. Very hard for me to come in these years and accept people giving me help.
Mm-hmm.
Very hard. So I've had to make that shift. So doing it myself I was very independent, and I just had to accomplish it. So I guess it's the same way of putting my father's philosophy in different words.
Do you think you were so independent because of the big age gap between you and your siblings?
I think I was so independent because I was born independent. I was born with this. I think I pushed it. They were much older, and I was sort of as like a separate family. The one sister never forgave me for being born and was angry with me until we were adults, until we were grandmothers, both of us. And then we became very close friends. And my older sister always took care of me, just as older sisters do.
Mm-hmm.
She always took care of me, Ruth. But she died in her early 50s, in her mid-50s. And that was very sad for me. She did everything to help me grow up. For example, when I was 10, and we were going somewhere on a bus, and I was standing there with her, and she poked me and she said, "Stop making that noise." And I said, "What noise?" She said, "You're going like I was honking like a pig." She said, "Don't make that noise. Don't do that. That's terrible." So she was the one who told me things like that. Nobody else ever brought it up, so she taught me how to behave in the world. she helped me understand what you do and what you don't do.
Mm-hmm.
So, being raised in my family was difficult also because my grandmother, who was the one who went a little bananas, when they came to America and she reconciled, she had another couple of children, 3, no, 2 more, when she was here in the United States, and one of those children, one of the girls, and she would come and live at my house, and they would yell and they would scream and they would carry on and fight, and everybody was fighting until my father was ready to walk out the door. And I think that's part of why I became a psychologist, to understand their craziness.
Mm.
That was growing up with them. They weren't always there, but they would come and stay for months at a time. Seemed like forever. Yeah, but then they had to stop coming because my father wouldn't have them anymore. And he put his foot down, finally. You do what you have to do.
Right.
Yeah.
So back to your father. Yesterday you were telling us about his business ventures.
Yeah.
Can you go back into that?
Well, when he came to Brooklyn
Mhm.
during the Depression,
Yes.
and he lost his job
Yes.
in Massachusetts. And he came to Brooklyn. I don't know why he came to Brooklyn. But there's a market on 13th Avenue, like a big commercial, food market. They sold things in a big open market, potatoes, onions, carrots, everything like that. And people would come and shop there. So there were people that had garages or whatever, stock, where they kept their stuff, warehouses.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow he had a truck. I don't know how he had a truck. I was too young to know the details. And he would go out to Long Island from Brooklyn with the truck. First it was him and his brothers, his younger brothers. And they'd go out and they'd buy the onions and the potatoes in bags and carry the 50-pound bags and put it on the truck. It was very hard, intense work.
Mm-hmm.
And then they hired a guy. His name was Roland. He's a black guy, and he was with our family for a very long time. And he drove the truck or whatever he did, but he was there a lot. I mean, he became sort of part of the family-ish. And so he had that business until, and he would bring the potatoes and onions back from Long Island and sell them mostly to little mom and pop grocery stores. In those days, there was a mom and pop grocery store in every other block, and he would sell them that produce. And after a while, the A&P showed up and ran him out of business because they could do it much more efficiently. Also ran the mom and pop stores out of business, and they offered my father a job as a buyer, but he said no, he had to take care of his younger brothers. And they were all grown men with families. And from then on, he had one kind of little business after another. One was a beverage business where they had pop and they delivered it to homes. Another one, that one didn't go far. And then another one was a little restaurant in Manhattan. That was hard because there were gangs. It was in Manhattan, and there were gangs. I don't know what kind of gangs. Just gangs. He never said. And it was hard, and he had to close that down eventually. I don't think they got robbed, but they made it difficult. Just because, for no reason, I don't know why. So that was, and then he finally got on Social Security and retired. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then his brothers had to go and earn their own living because he was a bit older than them.
Mm-hmm.
And they had to still support their families, and somehow or other, they managed. They actually got jobs. The younger one got a job before they went to the restaurant, the youngest one.
Mm-hmm.
He did fine. Yeah. So that's my part of my family. Okay.
All right, so let's go back to you.
Getting back to
Yes.
me. Where was I?
So,
Was in high school? Junior?
Well, before we get back to that, do you have any memories that really stand out to you? Did you do anything really crazy as a kid? Or anything, like what stands out about your childhood? Or what's
Well,
your
I had
favorite
this-
memory?
I had this one experience when I was like in first grade, and my mother used to give me, they'd have a savings account for you in school. And they have a little book, and they put in the money when they give it to the teacher. And they'd save it to teach us how to use money. So my mother gave me 50 cents, and when I got to school, I didn't have it, and I swore somebody stole it or I lost it. I didn't know what happened to it. And then, I made a big fuss about that. And then I came home, and I was roller skating in my backyard, and it fell out of the lining of my jacket. It had gone through a hole in my pocket.
Oh no.
And I felt terrible, that I had made such a big deal out of it. Yeah. And I guess I learned from that not to try to understand more,
Mm-hmm.
to think it through a little bit more. So that was a learning lesson. Another thing from my childhood was with my brother, the one who's 100 now. But when he was before he went away to college, he bought this car. He tells me he paid, what did he tell me he paid for it? $25. The whole car cost $25. It was a Buick touring car. It was open, and it was long, and it had running boards on the sides. And we had a backyard, and he had it parked the wrong way in the backyard, sideways, so he could work on it, so he could have enough room to work on it. And he took it apart. He took the engine apart. Whatever he took apart, I didn't know. It looked like everything. I remember it very clearly because he cleaned it all and then he put it all back together again. And then he painted the car. And he painted the body a dark blue. And he painted the fenders a lighter blue, like an electric blue.
Mm-hmm.
And the wheel rims, which were wood, he painted yellow. So that was quite the car. And I told this story at his 100th birthday party also. And that's when he told me the rims were wood, and that he paid $25 for it, because he still remembered it also. And he didn't have it for a very long time, but it was a fun thing. A 17-year-old with a real mechanical genius was able to do. Nobody taught him. There were no classes. When my father first bought a car and went for a driver's license, that's when they moved to New York, and they bought the truck. He had to get driving lessons from the salesman. The salesman gave him driving lessons. The car salesman taught him how to drive. So that's how it was then. So, yeah. Okay, so back now to
Yes.
where did we go?
So we started talking a little bit about high school, and I think we were sort of getting close to getting into college. That's really where we left off.
I graduated from high school. Nothing remarkable about my high school.
Right.
It was an 80%. I had 80% average, total average, and that's a B, a solid B. in order to get into City College in New York or Brooklyn College, they were free, totally free colleges. You had to sit for 2 hours or 2 days, 8 hours a day. Well, one was 8 hours and one was 6 hours. Testing. This was pre-SATs, pre-ACTs. There was no such animal, no such thing. And we sat for those tests, and you had to have the average between the test and your high school had to be 85. And I got in. I must have been a really good test taker, because I must have got at least 90.
Mm-hmm. Right, yeah.
I couldn't answer any of the questions on chemistry or physics or anything like that. Skip those whole sections. I think it was also based on some other qualities. I don't know what they did. But I got in. And I went to City College. I told you that.
Yes.
Where because of my family, I was going to study accounting. And I only lasted one class. And then I stayed there for 1.5 years at City College. And it just got to, because I graduated because I was in the mid-year, I graduated in January. So I started college in January. So that's how it was 1.5 years.
How much did college cost?
And then I went to,
How much did the college cost?
college cost me nothing. Zero. Zip. Everybody in there was on a scholarship. Because we had to pass that test. Only people who passed it could go in. And people like your grandfather got in. He could only go to night classes until he proved himself. Competed with me for years because of that. That cost me nothing. And then I transferred to Brooklyn College because I came to believe I really needed liberal arts. And I went to Brooklyn College, which was closer, and I didn't have to ride that train into Manhattan all the time, which was a real pain. And this was much easier, although it was still traveling subways and buses. And it wasn't next door. And in Brooklyn College, I already had 1.5 years of college, so I was coming to finishing my sophomore year, and I'd have to declare a major. So I went to the departments, and I said I wanted to be a teacher. But they said, no, you can't, because your Brooklyn accent is so bad. I'm from Brooklyn. But they wouldn't let me be a teacher because I had a really strong Brooklyn accent. I didn't say D's and Do's. I didn't do that, but I did have a strong accent. So instead I decided to go into speech therapy. Then I took a course in psychology. And I got my first A ever. And this was not just, he had us do a study on a book, a novel. And mine was The World Next Door by somebody friend. His last name I think was Fritz Peters. Huh, I got the name. Fritz Peters. And I did this, and when, it was a big lecture hall class. And he read all of these. He scored them all. And this was a big moment in my life when I got an A. I got one of the very few A's he gave. He only gave a very few. And not only that, but he asked me to stay after class because he wanted to know who I was. He never knew me. I was never outstanding until I wrote this paper. And he wanted to talk to me, and he said, I know I gave you an A, but who helped you? Did somebody help you with this? I said, no, I did it myself. He said, did you read books? I said, oh yeah, I read a bunch of books. So on psychology, the ones you gave on the list. So he said, well, you have amazing insight. You should go into psychology. Ta-da! I found my future. 1A. And from then on, I got more of those. So when I started taking sociology and psychology, I stayed at Brooklyn College, and then I dropped out because I was going to get married. Then at Brooklyn College, because it's a poor kids' school, we didn't have sororities or fraternities. We had house plans, that's what it was called. They were like clubs, of course nobody lived on campus or anything. We would have parties, house parties, or talks or whatever they did, different activities. That was our social outlet. So I went to this one party, house party, and I remember I was wearing a black dress with a red rose and red high heels. And we came into and black hair. Don't forget the black hair. And we came into it was somebody's basement, and everybody was standing around, and ice, the ice was very thick. And this guy says, "Well, why don't you dance?" He says to something. I looked straight at him and I said, "Well, why don't you dance?" And that was your grandfather. Ta-da.
Pause.